Hello, security pros. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on today's ESA webinar, Leveraging Cloud Technology for Better Access Control. Cloud-based platforms are becoming more prevalent in the security industry, with so many end users demanding remote accessibility from their security systems. For security integrators, this means a bigger opportunity than ever before. Functions that previously were hardware-based now may be provided through cloud-based software, making access control more affordable, and application programming interfaces, APIs, enable access control software to be integrated with other systems such as video, making access control more powerful and versatile. I'm Riley Hogendorn, and I'll be facilitating our discussion today. Before we dive in with Lynn Wood from Security Control Integrators, Jesse McCrosty from Acre, and Brandon Cligg from Custom Alarm, I'd like to provide some tips for those of you joining us on your first ESA webinar. First of all, welcome. ESA, or the Electronic Security Association, is the largest and longest standing association serving the pro-installed electronic security and life safety industry. Our members are integrators, dealers, monitoring centers, and even manufacturers and service providers in the space. We are the voice of the electronic security and life safety industry. If your company is a member of the association, thank you. We hope you're taking advantage of your ESA benefits to leverage growth and connections for your team. If your company is not yet an ESA member, check us out. You'd be surprised at the power of membership. Get a feel for all of the ESA benefits, including savings on business insurance, training, sales team coaching, certifications that satisfy state licensing, and more at esaweb.org. All attendees will be muted for the duration of the session, but that does not mean we don't want to hear from you. If a question or comment comes to mind at any point during today's session, just click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll send these questions to our experts today. There's no need to save those questions until the end of today's presentation. If something pops up, go ahead and ask. We'll also be recording today's webinar so you can rewatch the on-demand session and share it with your colleagues. We at ESA realize your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of that time with us today. Without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves. Lynn, can you introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lynn Wood. I look after strategic accounts at Security Control Integrators here in Northern New Jersey in Pine Brook. SCI has been in business for about 15 years now, and we service all size accounts, small to medium-sized businesses, all the way up to enterprise global accounts. And we pride ourselves on providing excellent customer service.
Great.
And I'm just, sorry, Riley, sorry to step on you there. I'm Jesse McCrosty from Acre. I originally came from an IT background, switched to product management about 15 years ago. I've worked on several different products within the industry, from VMS platforms to access control. And about 2 years ago, I switched to the Acre team. And that allows me to work across the different Acre brands, Vanderbilt, Open Options, RS2, and a few others on various projects and products.
Awesome, thanks. And Brandon, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Riley. My name is, excuse me, Brandon Cligg with Custom Alarm. I'm based out of Rochester, Minnesota. Custom Alarm is a local family-owned company that's been around for better part of 52 years now. 53 years. So I started in the industry about 8 years ago. I was a commercial security consultant engineer, and then about 3 years ago took over the sales organization and am now the sales team director. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for everyone introducing themselves. So we're going to begin our presentation. Jesse, let's dive in.
Okay. So that took care of the first two bullets on our agenda here. The next one, I just wanted to do a little introduction of Acre. If for anyone who's not familiar with Acre, you've probably heard of Acre before, I'm sure, but maybe you don't know, what brands are within the Acre ecosystem. So just to give people a little bit of background, Acre is a global company with offices located in and products installed all around the world. It was founded in 2012 Acre first acquired Vanderbilt from Ingersoll Rand, which is now Legion, and then went on to acquire Vanderbilt International, ComNet, Open Options, RS2, and Raspberry. And then just this year, a company called TDS in Ireland. So today, Acre employs approximately 400 employees in more than 25 countries. So we're here today to talk about the cloud and access control. And I guess one question I want to start off with here is, why is the cloud important, and why are we even talking about it today? So in my opinion, the cloud's important because it's the future. We've seen how far it's come over the last 10 years, and we can only really imagine how much farther it will go in the next 10 years. But nobody can really deny how the cloud's role in our everyday lives these days, not just in the security industry, but in all facets of the digital world, from entertainment to office productivity. So with that, I'm going to jump into some questions for discussion here amongst myself, Brandon, and Lynn. Okay, so the first question: access control has changed significantly over the years. In your words, how have you seen this evolution come across some of the customers you work with? So, Lynn, do you have any examples?
Sure. So aside from the obvious move from the old analog and closed systems to the introduction of the open, more integrated systems, security has become a much larger conversation. So when you're speaking with customers, it's no longer just facilities or the head of security that makes those decisions. So now there's this convergence where you've got to involve a larger group of people. So like IT folks, for example, IT departments, since security systems are now part of the Internet of Things, there are a lot more stakeholders involved. So all of those groups have to be involved in the decision making. So that's one of the ways that I've seen, a big shift over the years from when it was just where you would deal with, one or two people with facilities when you were talking about security.
Right. Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that was a great point, Lynn. I remember starting off in the industry, and as you mentioned, setting an appointment, I was going to meet with the facilities manager. Access control back then was securing a door so somebody couldn't come in and out. Primarily back in the day, I remember just being exterior doors. But now, now we have IT consultants that are becoming more of our go-tos and point of contacts, more so than even the facilities guys. Access control, rather than just being securing perimeter doors, now we're putting them on interior doors and trying to measure operation and productivity and securing areas to where individuals who are employed by the company can't go into certain aspects, IT rooms, security rooms, data closets, anything like that. So I think that's definitely evolved in the last few years. And I think with the introduction of like OSDP readers and the technology, it's come a long way in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, and you mentioned technology too. We've seen what's happened to credentials in access control, everything from MagStripe, and now everybody's got credentials on their phone with mobile credentials. Obviously, we're here talking about the cloud. Everything used to be on-prem, and now you've got hybrid solutions, everything from on-prem all the way up to the cloud, a full cloud solution. Web clients and thick clients, everything used to be all thick clients everywhere, but now you've got hybrid environments or sometimes full web client environments as well.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of options out there, which is great, but it's also overwhelming for a lot of the end users. And so I think that's the integrator's job, is to help distill that down and guide them, because everyone's requirements are different. So and their needs are different. So it might be a different solution. The cloud might not be the solution for everybody. So you have to be able to find out what their needs are and what solution or customized solution are you going to provide to make their lives easier.
Right. Absolutely. So cloud can mean a lot of things these days. At least to me, I find that sometimes definitions of what the cloud actually is can vary. And it is, in my opinion, it isn't one specific thing necessarily, but in both of your opinions, what defines the cloud? What is cloud architecture, I guess? What would be, what defines the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, I know years ago when the cloud first came along, it was everybody kind of envisioned, is it literally this cloud in the sky? Is it rainy day? Is it sunny day? Where's the cloud? Is it moving based off the wind? So it's interesting, as we've come along and we've gotten more familiar, as you mentioned there, Jesse, with all platforms in life, not just security, be more open to the cloud architecture. I mean, to me in the security industry, I try to explain to the customer, the cloud is, as you mentioned earlier, it's not, you don't have to worry about hosting services at your site. So a lot of customers, as you mentioned, as the technology shifted and went to more IT-based controllers and everything like that, we were needing to have IT controllers and IT management people actually provide servers and virtual machines for us. And it was a lot of upkeep, a lot of maintenance. Some companies that we dealt with, they didn't really have an IT guy, and you would deal with maybe their comptroller operations manager that would kind of be providing some of this information. And it was a little bit difficult. So I think when the cloud kind of came along, and the way I can explain it to customers is it's essentially, it's an offsite premise that we are hosting this software for you. You are able to access this software with proper credentials through a hyperlink, through a web browser, through an app on your phone. And you don't have to worry about any physical hardware for that actual brains of the system being there on your location.
Yeah. Same thing, to me, it's software as a service, and why they called it the cloud, and it's just the internet, right? It's the same thing. But to your point with the security patches and the software upgrades, if you think back again years ago, when your software updates, you'd have to reboot your computer maybe once every couple months. But nowadays it's like once every other week, if you're lucky, or every couple days. And so you're constantly, supplying these or doing these Windows updates and security patches, and it's almost an impossibility to keep up with everything. So when you can kind of farm that out, and I know we'll get to that later in the discussion, but to data centers that can manage that for you, that's one less headache that you have to worry about.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned data centers. So to me, the cloud is really just, like you said, Brendan, a solution hosted off-site somewhere. It typically is in a data center, something like Amazon Web Service or Azure, but it might be in a small IT provider. It might even be in the integrator's own, their own facility, somewhere off-site to the end user, where the end user doesn't have to worry about that server architecture. Really is one of the main points. And then if they're given, so in some cases there might be a remote, a remote thick client connection. In other cases, more of a web-based connection. I think web-based would probably be the most typical for cloud architecture, but maybe not the only option out there. So next up, how do you see cloud-based access control having an impact on the security industry going forward?
I think it's becoming a more trusted technology. It's certainly gaining acceptance, and you can kind of see it every year. People get more and more comfortable with it. And again, if they don't have an IT department or have the resources to manage on-site systems and servers, it makes a whole lot of sense. So we're definitely seeing a shift in the mindset toward acceptance of cloud.
Yeah, that's true.
I 100% agree with that, Lynn. I mean, we, over just the last 2 years with cloud, have grown probably about 250% with the number of customers that we provide cloud services for. So again, in the beginning, cloud, I think, was kind of that word that if you caught the right IT guy, he would know what you were talking about. And he would trust that information and know that it was a reliable source for that software and for those services. But I think now, I mean, we have customers that a simple one-door access control system we're doing on the cloud. It's not, the larger 25, 50, 100 plus door systems like it was a little bit in the beginning. We're getting down to the everyday, small mom and pop shop that is just down on your corner. So I think that comes a long way with just the way the cloud architecture has grown in popularity as it's out there, just not in the security industry, but in our everyday lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to just keep taking more and more market share. That's going to keep accelerating as life goes on, right? You mentioned in the beginning that, people didn't really know what it was or they were resistant to it. And that's absolutely true. I can remember 10 years ago when Office 365, or maybe it was 8 years ago, was coming around, nobody wanted to pay a subscription for their Office. And now pretty much everybody does. So the cloud is here to stay, and people get used to it and they start trusting it more and more. And yeah, I do think the low hanging fruit is probably going to be those smaller sized, small to medium sized businesses. But I think eventually, and who knows, it might be 5 or 10 years down the line, but some of the real big enterprises might start thinking about it as well.
And to your point, Jesse, that more and more businesses are using Office 365, so that's in the cloud, or their CRMs are in the cloud. We bank in the cloud, our medical information, all of that's in the cloud. So why not our security system as well? It just kind of goes hand in hand. It makes sense to do that as well.
For sure. Okay, so what kinds of organizations can benefit most from cloud-based access control? Brandon, why don't you start with that one, if you would, please? Uh-oh.
Is Brandon frozen?
Lynn, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have one thought. Well, like we said before, those without dedicated IT resources or security personnel, franchises, right, or multiple sites that don't have a common network interconnectivity. So if you want to be able to manage multiple sites, you can easily do that with a cloud system, especially if you don't have that network that connects them all. You can still, do that with a cloud system and manage everything from one software location. So, organizations that want the convenience, and small to medium-sized businesses, like law offices, medical buildings, and things like that. Brandon, are you back?
Yeah, I am back. I apologize there.
No worries.
Yes, I mean, I do think we've had some success in kind of the manufacturing warehouse vertical markets ourselves. But we have been getting a lot more in depth with some of the IT components. What I found the last few years is that IT guys, they know each other. You mentioned one IT guy's name, especially with us, with just our geographic location. They may know another IT guy that's a few hours away, but they do speak pretty highly. So we've had a lot of good success with just making those relationships with the IT individuals themselves. And then the banking industry, I think that's kind of shifted here a little bit recently. I think just in the beginning stages of cloud, they were a little hesitant, but as you mentioned earlier, Lynn, as we start banking, through the cloud, and we can access our checking account through our phones and everything like that, that they've kind of become a little bit more willing to allow us to do the cloud services with their security systems.
Right, and it seems like that would be, they'd be a perfect fit, since they have a lot of disparate locations. You have a bank on every corner, but they may or may not be all connected by networking. But if you have a remote location or something, it's a perfect fit for cloud.
Yeah, we have several customers that are multi-enterprise banking institutions that are all, across the Midwest, that are part of the cloud system. So we found, rather than just having your small local branch and a couple ones that are, off First Street and Second Street kind of deal, we now have a solution to provide them for, ones that are out of state and everything like that.
Yeah, right. So I know we're focused today on cloud-based access control, but what other areas is the cloud being used for security today? Can you think of any other areas that there's cloud-based?
Video surveillance, analytics, building automation, especially now in where people aren't really in the offices, so they've got to control their temperature and their lights, and it's more important nowadays that they don't really there's nobody really in them. Maybe they're starting to come back slowly now, but especially over the past year that became important. So those are some of the other areas that I see cloud use in.
Right.
Yeah, and right along with that, I mean, we've had with the video surveillance system, VMS platforms. More recently, we do a lot of fire integration as well. We're a fire dealer, and one of our major brands that we install has recently started to shift to a cloud. They have a gateway now that can be connected to a fire alarm control panel, to where essentially the end user would be able to view exactly what they would see on their annunciator or in front of their panel. They would be able to see from their phone, from a mobile app. So it's come a long way. The cloud, as we mentioned, isn't really going anywhere. I just see it becoming more larger in its growth through many different platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly not going anywhere. It's certainly going to keep growing. Yeah, I think VMS would probably be the next one on my list as far as how quickly things are going to grow. Whether it's just being able to view your cameras in the cloud, at least streaming it to your phone easily, or storage as well. And that to me, I think has taken a little while to adapt because of how expensive storage can be in the cloud. But certainly some customers are willing to pay that price. And that storage cost will also likely come down in years to come as well. So eventually that will become more and more affordable, and more video will be up there in the cloud as well, I think. So what are some benefits of cloud-based access control for end users and for integrators?
Yeah, I think for end users, there's a lot of benefits. As far as, we mentioned, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more here in depth, but, what we're talking about with the cloud is there's a monthly, subscription or service fee that comes along with that. And what we found is that if we're pricing this at the right margins and everything like that, and right in pricing to the end users, that it can be very beneficial and makes a very good financial decision for them, rather than them having to worry about the upkeep of that software or of those servers. And as Len mentioned, the routine software updates and patch updates and firmware updates and everything that comes along with maintaining a server, they don't have to worry about that any longer. They don't have to worry about any of that maintenance or upkeep, or worrying if that server fails. You're kind of taking all that out of their hands with the cloud. So I think it's beneficial to them when we explain it to end users like that. For ourselves, a lot easier for the installation standpoint. I know exactly what information I need when we sell this job. I don't have to worry too much about getting IT involved and having them, set up separate VLANs or anything like that for security aspect. The majority of the stuff we use is all talking out. It's DHCP addressing and everything like that. So it's a easier installation from our standpoint as a dealer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing from an end user standpoint is that they always have the latest and greatest version, the latest features. They're not going to have an old system that's 8 versions behind, and it's going to take a week to schedule and implement an upgrade to get them to the next version, and it's going to be another 10 years before they upgrade again. So they always have the latest features. They always have the latest security patches. It's almost like a set it and forget it. Yep. So I think that's a great selling point for end users as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lynn.
Sorry, I had another note written down that I wanted to mention too, because as those systems age, and if you don't keep up with the updates, then they become more vulnerable to security breaches, right? So the longer that they sit there.
Right. So that one's sort of compound effect, because not only are you not having to worry about it, but you're also not having to allow your system to get out of date, get insecure, and potentially create a security vulnerability on your network. So it's twofold. Right. Yeah. On top of that, obviously, we've already sort of mentioned you're not maintaining any servers physically either. You don't have to worry about downtime. So when things are in the cloud, they're typically backed up. They're running on cluster type environments a lot of the time. So you don't have to worry about it failing generally. Of course, Azure does go down from time to time, 0.1% of the time maybe, or better. But yeah, in general, you're going to have a power supply fail. You're going to have a hard drive fail. Those things happen all the time in servers you maintain locally. So not having to worry about those things is a huge plus.
Yeah, it takes a lot of the unexpected surprise cost out of the equation as well. So before with the licensing and everything like that, typically, licensing is attached to a MAC address of a server or a virtual machine or anything like that. And, people don't realize when they upgrade their computers, well, that software was attached to that. Now, typically,
Mm.
without cloud, with your just licensing a software, now I have to charge you for a transfer license. And that's all added cost. But now with the cloud, don't have to worry about anything physically on site, any computer, any server, and essentially any licensing. So
Right.
it takes a lot of those costs out of the equation.
Yeah, that's a good point. The licensing is a lot easier to manage, and you don't run into those situations where, a server was moved or component of it was upgraded and it breaks the license. Yeah. So we're all concerned about security and safety of our data. Is data really safe in the cloud? What do you think? Is it less safe, more safe than a traditional on-prem solution?
Well, it's becoming more safe. I think it's going to be impossible to keep up with, the hackers that are always trying to find a new way to, get into people's information. And but if you have these large data center providers, AWS, Microsoft Azure, they're the team of experts, right? They've got all the manpower that's focused on that. They're going to identify the threats. They're going to have a fix as soon as possible. So, why not let them handle that? That's their area of expertise. So I think you have to feel like you're in pretty good hands if you're going with a larger data center to do that. And then also they have encryption, the redundancy that you were mentioning, Jesse, as well. So
Yep.
they can take care of all of that.
Yeah, really good point, Lynn. I mean, with AES 256 encryption and a lot of the different security measurements that these data centers put in place, I get asked that question a lot. I know my team gets asked that question a lot of, is it more secure? Is it less secure? How is the security or vulnerability of the cloud? And the way I explain it is, we're using data centers that this is their job. This is their sole job, is to focus on the security of these cloud server farms, essentially. This is what they do. I mean, if I were to sell you just typical licensing and software and you'd store it on site, are you trained to do that? Or know what all the data breaches and everything that goes out there and what can go on? Typically the answer is no. So in my opinion, it's probably a little bit more secure than what they may have even been used to doing in the past.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier too, Lynn, about the Windows updates and security patches and all that stuff's in there by default. You don't have to worry about that stuff, where an on-prem, you might lapse a week or two, and then sometimes that's all it can take for a vulnerability to be exploited. Okay, so as key integrators of Vanderbilt and RS2, can you share how cloud-based solutions have impacted some of your end users? Any stories or anything you can share with us?
Yeah, I think as we've mentioned here, the last year and a half or 2 years now going on with COVID, I think that's actually opened up the opportunity for cloud services for a lot of end users. As we said, a lot of people, in the beginning stages of the virus and then pandemic, were not able to go on site physically, whether it be lockdowns or enforcements or anything like that, through their municipality, through their own business standards. And we had with access control systems, a lot of that software was on-site premise based, to where you couldn't make changes, you couldn't make updates, you couldn't change your schedules unless you were physically on site. So I think the pandemic really helped us out in the aspect of being able to say, hey, you can control your system just if you were on site, or as you would if you were on site, but now you can do it from your home. A lot of people are working remote now, and you can update schedules, add schedules, unlock doors. Everything that you can typically do from on site, you can do remotely now. And I think it's really helped us out.
Right.
I also think that people have become spoiled by how easy it is to use apps on smartphones, right? And so I think that's helping push the security industry to simplify how we do things, between people in their smartphones and also consumer solutions that are also cloud-based, and everything's very, very simple. So people don't want complexity. Can't blame them. I don't, and we're spoiled. So I think that's, like I said, prompting the security industry to try to keep pace to be able to provide the same kind of offering to their customers.
Right. Everything from the sandwich shop down the road has a mobile app anymore that you can order a turkey sandwich on. So, okay. How does one know if cloud-based access control is right for their organization? What do you think, Lynn?
Well, some easy questions to ask is, do they have IT folks that have the time to perform regular maintenance and the constant updates and upgrades to the systems? Do they want that remote access? Do they want that convenience to be able to maybe lock down their doors remotely, or issue a mobile credential, right, without having to go to their desktop that's in their office? I think that convenience is worth a lot to them. So that, and also do they need redundancy? Do they want a cost-effective solution that that they can maybe build into as an operating expense versus a capital expenditure, and then they have the predictive costs for years going forward? They won't have any surprises. So if they you get some answers to those questions and then see if it's a fit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Lynn. I agree with every single one of those. And one of the biggest selling tactics or tools that we use when we explain cloud to customers is, do you have that IT team? Do you have a dedicated team? Do you use a third-party IT team that helps you out with your networking aspects? And right off the get-go, if they don't, then we typically look as cloud as a solution, because we know we won't be able to get the information that we need if they were to host it on site or do on premise. And then, as you mentioned, just the ability to have that predictive cost of ownership, more or less. You don't have to worry about the surprises when something happens to your server, to your machine, or if you want to be adding licensing or anything like that. It's a simple monthly cost that we pass along to our end users, and we have a fairly good response with it.
Right. Yeah, the OpEx versus CapEx expense, I think, is at least one key question in the equation.
Yeah, and I think that also lends itself to quicker project installations, so you don't have to go through these levels of management and approvals, so you can get things installed much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Right. So what are 3 of the top benefits an organization gets out of migrating to the cloud? So thinking about end users here, and we probably have already mentioned these as we've been talking, but what would you say would maybe be the top 3 benefits they get?
Yeah, I think the ability to access that information at your fingertips. That's number 1 for me. Number 2, obviously, just having that predictive pricing. You don't have to worry about the surprises. And then number 3, I think it's the ease of use of the cloud system. Not having to worry about any of those on-site things that you would normally have to take care of. So a lot of good benefits with it.
Yeah, those are the 3 that I had too.
Right. And for myself, I would say, I'm probably also just repeating you guys, but no servers to maintain. You get all those security patches and software updates automatically. And then view and configure from anywhere at any time, whether it's from a mobile app, a web browser. You don't need to worry about a thick client typically. So yeah, I think those are the top 3 as well. So what is the physical security industry doing to make more affordable and cost-effective technology solutions for end users?
Well, I think with the less upfront cost with the hosted solutions, and then integrators and manufacturers, you can offer bundles and incentives where you kind of build in that hardware into a package. If there's still an issue with the pricing, so you have a lot of flexibility there for how you want to present that, that quote, and you can work with the end users to get something in the price point that works for their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I know with ours too, for us, as our our partner that we work with, they do a really good job with their pricing model. They make it really effective to where you can almost tier. We as the company, as a dealer, we have an enterprise server. So there's different tiers, different levels based off of how many customers you think you will have. And, as you add on customers, you add on potential RMR. So, but the pricing standpoint is really, really responsive, I think, to the end users. We start off at, $25 for the first door, $15 from doors 2 to 8, and then it kind of tiers down as you continue to add on more doors to your system. But really, really easy, simple pricing structure. And I think that's what we do to help the end users to make it easy. You don't have to worry about, a $50,000 system for, 20 doors of access control like you typically would have to in the past. We can cut that in half without having to worry about the licensing and the servers and all of that, and spread that cost of ownership through as an operational expense that comes out every single month. So the pricing model, I think, from top down, from the data centers to the partners, to the integrators, to the end users, is a really steady workflow.
Great. Okay, so a couple more questions here. We know that COVID had a major impact on the world and all of our security needs. In addition, what are some of the other reasons markets are embracing touchless, contactless systems?
Well, I think for convenience and efficiency. Security should be present, but we don't necessarily have to see it all the time. It should just facilitate what we need to do in our daily lives, but it shouldn't be present a barrier or be a distraction. So you think of like a moving walkway, it's going to get you there faster, but you hardly notice it, of course, except when it's not working.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You don't see too many, what should I say, security teams anymore that you typically deal with unless it's a larger enterprise system. We don't have anybody that's really standing out in front of, these monitors and screens and making sure everything's working like we did probably 10 years ago, at least. Like Lynn mentioned, it's something that they just wanted to be in the background and working. So I think that's the touchless, contactless, physically not seen, but knowing that it's there and your business is secure.
Yeah.
Right.
Peace of mind. Right.
Peace of mind. Yep.
Yeah. And we have some of this technology today. I don't know how heavily deployed it is, but facial recognition can certainly be used to get through openings. I don't know if you, Brandon, or you, Lynn, have seen that deployed much. I haven't heard of it being deployed heavily, but I think it's probably coming if it's not here already. And something like that, you would just be able to walk straight through the building and you stay secure in the building, but the user also doesn't have to fumble with a card, put a thumbprint on something, scan their iris, all these different, solutions. So, which kind of jumps into the next question, or at least the answer I had for the next question, which is, how do you see access control advancing in the future? And my one answer was going to be more facial recognition to get through openings. What do you guys think?
I think that we'll see integrations get much easier, and so more interconnected devices that are working in harmony. I know everybody's trying with get the different protocols and like Zigbee and all these different things, and then you have these smart things at home that don't talk to each other. But I think as that's just an example from the consumer side. But as things are more tightly integrated and open, that should become more seamless, and that thereby giving people more options too for what they want to integrate.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I think the access control system overall, a lot of the dealers out there and partners and integrators, they allow open architecture. So there's a lot of APIs that can be written to where you're taking multiple platforms and kind of turn it into one system. So, I explained it to the guys of, years ago, inputs and outputs. It's all about inputs and outputs. You can trigger this, relay this, and pop that and make that happen. I think we're going to see that more and more with the access control, but it's going to be just on a simple press of a button or something that you're touching on your phone, whether it be, your fire alarm system's going off, and rather than having a Knox box, you can push a mobile credential to the fire department that's responding. I think that's a thing of the future that's, just years away. I think that's really where the technology is going with, the mobile credentials, the smart readers, the different locking mechanisms that are out there now. It's come a long way, and I think we're not even on the cutting edge of what's to come.
Right. Yeah, I agree. For sure. And the last question I have, what additional cloud-based technologies are on the horizon for our industry? What do you think is coming next?
Refined analytics, I think those will continue to get better. But then, still having to navigate the privacy issues. So, that's not going to go away. So that'll be pretty interesting. I don't know, Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think analytics are there. From my simple home security system to where I can get notified when I have a person, vehicle, or place, person, animal, or vehicle that crossed into my motion triggered analytical events. I think that's going to become more and more standard than just your typical home security system. I'm really excited about this with the fire alarm stuff. I know a lot of people think that fire alarm is just code driven and all you want it to happen is when your fire alarm goes off, you want the fire department there. But the way that the facility managers can now utilize that system through the cloud and what they can do with the gateways that are being connected to these panels to where they have full access. I think in 5 years from now, that's going to be huge as far as monitoring communication and just the ability to troubleshoot and diagnose without actually having to physically roll a truck.
Sure.
Good point.
Yeah, and some of these analytics do trigger some privacy concerns, especially in certain regions, and obviously it's highly legislated in Europe, and who knows if that will be coming more to the U.S. if that'll get bigger. But there's ways to have both the privacy protected with analytics and still get the data you need to be safe and secure, I think. And it just needs to be well executed.
Yeah.
So I think that's all we had for questions. We're going to open it up now to questions from the audience.
Yep. Thank you so much. So I just want to reiterate what you just said. If any of you in the audience have any questions whatsoever, click the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen. Just write it and I'll present it to our speakers right now. We do have one question right here. It says, what is the typical deployment time for installing a cloud-based system?
Well, I would say it can vary by system, but probably in general, it's going to be quicker than an on-prem solution. Do you, Brandon or Lynn, do you have any ideas on an exact time frame, or would you say it varies a bit too?
Go ahead, Lynn.
I think that, since you don't have that server that you need to configure and stand up, if you just have a couple doors, it's just a day or two, a couple days, if you wanted to do, let's say 2 or 4 doors. And especially if you have a panel that has a reader interface built in, basically it's plug and play and, add some card holders. It doesn't take long. The door hardware would take the longest, but what we're finding is with a lot of these downsizes that are occurring now because of COVID and everybody's, working different places or working from home, we'll have new tenants move in. So all the door hardware is already in place and they want to get connected to the cloud. So at that point, you're halfway there, you're more than halfway there. You just, pop on the panel and get your card holders in. So it's very quick to get those up. And again, because if they don't have to go through the approval process of capital expenditure, that helps speed things along as well.
Yeah.
And I guess the only variable that we have is we've measured, and I can say a cloud-based system versus an on-premise system that we would do in the past. We've cut our installation time down by about 60%. Again, because we don't have to worry about these servers having to be connected. We found more and more often that the simple thing of just finding the IT individuals and who to answer our questions, we would be sitting on site a lot of the times. And now we don't have to worry about that. Our team actually has a remote support specialist that configures the site before we actually step on site. So we do a lot of pre-programming in-house on the tech bench. And then once we go out there, it's a simple plug and play. And then verifying cards, user schedules, everything like that with the customer.
Mhm. Yeah, very
Great.
quick.
So we do have another question. It says, what cloud system does Acre offer?
Okay, so I can answer that. We do have a few. So we've got Act 365, which we offer across our brands. That is a small to medium-sized single door controller, simple cloud-based system. And then, of course, you have RS2's Access It Universal Software as a Service. That's the one that Brandon's been referring to a few times. And then we also have a hosted version of DNA Fusion as well, through Open Options. And one that's really not access control is the Raspberry Monitor cloud system. So Raspberry Monitor, just real quickly, we offer it on our Raspberry servers that we sell through Raspberry and ComNet. And that basically is a way that you can monitor your server and its health remotely. So that's really helpful for integrators and end users to see, without having to roll a truck to the site to see what might be wrong with a machine.
Gotcha. Thank you. We have another question. Well, we have two from Rich. I'll jump to a second question really quick. He says, what types of techniques are you using to overcome the closed network objection to the cloud?
A good question. And Brandon, I wonder have you run into that argument a lot when you're out there selling cloud?
We haven't typically. Fortunately enough, we haven't run into really any of those objections yet. So I guess I don't really have a response for that.
I think that's the hard one to overcome. And the only maybe compromise is, a web device, right? Help me out here, Jesse. What am I trying to say? The web server is on the device, right? It's on the panel. So then that way it's in your facility, it's on your network, and you can still access it remotely if you go through the VPN. So maybe that's the compromise for that.
Okay,
Right.
thank you. And he has another question. It does come with a disclaimer. It's not exactly related, he said, but what are you seeing in the drone detection space?
I'm not an expert on drones, but it's funny you mentioned that. Let me just tell you something real quick, because I was thinking back to, this was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And at one of the trade shows, these giant drones that look like pterodactyls, they're huge. And now you can get pocket-sized drones from Amazon. So I guess drones are available to everyone at this point. I can see pros and cons for them, and security tour would be a good use for them. But other than that, I can't really speak to the drones. Maybe Brandon, you can.
Yeah, we don't see it a whole lot in our market. Again, being in the Midwest, it seems like everything comes it takes a little bit longer of a time to get to us. I will say our only familiarity with the drones is we do have one that we use to take some cool shots, posting for marketing and social media of what we've done and installations and everything like that from an outside perspective with cameras and everything. So I don't see I guess I'm not too familiar with any other drone technology.
Okay,
Right, and I'm not either, but Lynn, I think I remember the demo you were talking about at that one trade show a few years ago.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we have one last question, it looks like. Just want to remind the attendees, if you have questions, go ahead and ask them now. But this looks like our last question. What is the average cost per door for a cloud access control system?
Well, I can speak to one of the Acre products, Act 365 at least, which is a small to mid-size, like I said before, system. So and it's very simple. Hardware-wise, you just have one single door controller to worry about. So the list price on something like that is $600 for the hardware, and then $9 a month for the service for that one door. Obviously, you have to add on top of that, wiring your door, if you're not converting an already wired door. So you might need door hardware and some other things added on top of there, but it's a pretty simplified cost structure. Brandon, you had mentioned some pricing you've you've worked with too. Do you have an
Yeah, I
average
mean,
cost that you would say?
the average cost, typically what we explain is about, with locking mechanisms, if it was a brand new facility, supplying that, installing that, we're about $1,500 for a turnkey solution. And then again, we're getting about $25 a month for the first door of access control cloud. And then it kind of goes down from there, $15 for doors 2 through 8. I mean, our average one right now, we're doing about a $5,000. It's almost to the point to where you can put it together as a bundle, a 4-door system for $5,000, and it's going to charge you $70 a month. So 4 doors, $5,000, $70 a month. And that's kind of what I mentioned earlier. It's just the pricing, the way these models are. It's pretty easy to do a bundle kind of deal.
Right. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I think that's very affordable, and it, definitely should fit into most people's budgets for a security system, comparing it to an on-premises system.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So it looks like that was our last question. Just want to thank all the attendees who participated in this webinar. Thank you for attending and learning with us. And I do want to thank Lynn and Jesse and Brandon for this amazing presentation. Thanks, everyone. And it looks like we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.